In tonight's Dorchester segment, we look at the mayor's message on the state of the city, new leadership for the city council, and some reflections on the 10th anniversary of a catastrophic earthquake in Haiti. To fill us in is the managing editor and publisher of the Dorchester Reporter, Bill Forry. Thank you very much for being with us, Bill.
Thanks, Chris.
Bill, as far as the state of the city, the mayor got a lot of attention for wanting more independence and control with the fate of the MBTA, but what about housing? Because you covered that a lot in Dorchester. What about what the mayor said on that topic?
Right, so the mayor really made a point of, it was one of the highlights of his speech to talk about the city, his budget putting in $500 million by his count over the next 5 years into affordable housing. That's over and above what they're doing right now. And I think what was interesting about that is just how much of that sum is really being counted through a tax that hasn't been approved yet by the state legislature. It's a bit of a hole in the policy, to be candid. There's a bit of a optimistic view here that the state legislature would approve what is now just a home rule petition by the city of Boston. So the council and the mayor both have advanced this proposal, but it's now in the form of a bill on Beacon Hill, which we just don't know at the state whether or not that would pass. And a significant chunk of that $500 million would have to be generated through this luxury tax, which would be a new surcharge on luxury or $2 million plus property transfers in the city of Boston.
Now, that's a tax that would not be imposed on any other community or any other properties in those communities. But at the same time, I see a lot of state reps and senators who look at this and saying, what does that do for us? Why should we vote for it?
It's still a strike against them in the view of conservative constituents, for sure, in districts in the suburbs and outer suburbs of Massachusetts, of Boston, that aren't really in league with the interests of Boston necessarily, or the Boston delegation. The state reps, state senators from Boston surely would support the mayor and the council on this one, but they're not going to be the deciders on that, right? I mean, it's going to be the entire legislature, or at least a majority. And also you have a Republican governor who doesn't like the idea of taxes usually. And so it's a bit of an uphill climb for a bill like that in a presidential election year, which is also a state house election year for those suburban lawmakers. So there is some skepticism about that part of the proposal, despite the general sense of enthusiasm for the direction that the mayor's going. I mean, I think housing advocates in particular are enthused about the idea of more funding, but the real politics of it are that's a big climb for that bill.
Now, one of the things I also picked up on watching the speech, it's a formulaic thing where the mayor shakes hands with the governor at the end. It doesn't matter who the mayor is or who the governor is. But this year, you think of all these things that Walsh needs help from the State House on, especially from the governor. That's important, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and they have a famously good rapport and a friendship. I don't think that there'll be any question that Charlie Baker and certain lawmakers will be eager to help the mayor in certain areas, but again, a new tax that's more conservative voters in a presidential election year, when you have a lot more conservative voters coming out likely this year. It's a bit of a steep climb for that, but no doubt the mayor will be able to count on Charlie Baker for other things, and there's a multitude of measures, home rule petitions going in front of the legislature this year.
Of course, another story I was reminded of when I looked down and saw the people at this event, the people on the city council who pushed the mayor on some things, including that new tax you mentioned, and in some of the initiatives on transportation. What about them?
Well, I think it's fair to say that this current council and its predecessor council has been moving the Walsh administration more to the left, more progressive on policies like marijuana equity, which the new city council new city council president Kim Janey championed. This housing measure, a couple of different housing measures championed by Lydia Edwards. And so, yeah, the mayor has embraced it. And I think it's fair to say this mayor, compared to his predecessor, Tom Menino, has been more collaborative with this council and the last couple. And but I think there's also a measure of real politic there as well, that the constituency's changing. The demographics have changed, not only of the council, but of the city. And in an election year in 2021 coming up, which is likely to be competitive. I think it's fair to say the tea leaves are becoming a little bit more clear, I think, in each passing week. The critiques of the mayor by certain councilors, Michelle Wu and Andrea Campbell of late in particular, signal the likelihood, I think, of some kind of a challenge if Marty Walsh runs again.
Speaking of tea leaves, there was only one thing anywhere close to a dissenting vote around Kim Janey becoming the city council president. That was from Frank Baker. He voted president, people saying, was he sending a message? And if he was, what was it?
Well, he did. He was out of the 13 councilors, he was the only one to vote present and not vote yes, it would have made it a unanimous vote for Kim Janey, which candidly would have been the conventional form that the council would take. It was a fait accompli going into Monday morning that Councilor Janey would be elected president. It was surprising to see Councilor Baker vote president, just in terms of the optics of it, right? However, if you've watched Frank Baker on the council these years, as we have, and you've watched some of his recent votes, he's been a dissenting vote on a number of things, including that luxury tax on housing transfer fees that we just described. He voted against it. He's very much aligned with a more moderate strain of the council, which is now heavily in the minority. I think it's fair to say, and I've talked to people close to Frank Baker about this vote. He, first of all, was not supportive of Kim Janey. He just isn't. And on policy matters, he's feeling uncomfortable with the direction of this council. I think you can expect more dissenting votes from Baker. Whether or not it will matter, and it probably won't, he's a signal. He's also a signal of he's a close ally to the mayor. He has been from the get-go with his career. And I think that's a signal of discomfort with this council being a little bit, in his view, and of Walsh loyalist view, of being a little bit too aggressive with him right now.
Now, if that vote really were about the luxury tax, I'm thinking here, is this another elected official trying to appease developers, or is this somebody like Frank, in his case, being a union guy, he's worried about jobs in the trade unions, that this could be killed off by that?
Right, well, I think it could be both of those things. No question, he's been aligned deeply with the development community. His own family members are involved in development in the city. He's not alone in that, by the way, on the council. But the truth is that I think he sees this as, we're in a boom time, let's not disrupt what is a booming city. The mayor's not wrong when he characterized the city's current state as probably the strongest we've ever been in his speech the other night. There's a strain of thought on the council and the minority that adding too much burden to the development community, putting too much strain on housing costs is actually going to be counterproductive to affordability and to the growth of the city.
Andrea Campbell, the outgoing city council president, she represents Dorchester and Mattapan mainly. She put out her vision about the Boston Public Schools, very disturbed with a lack of progress there, given the timing of this right around the time of the state of the city. What do you think she meant by that?
Well, clearly, Councilor Campbell is disappointed that the plan that she formulated and rolled out last June really hasn't taken any traction, and as she sees it at least, hasn't been incorporated into what the mayor laid out on Tuesday night in his State of the City. She very quickly put out tweets which were a pretty sharp critique in a negative way of the mayor's BPS plan. She basically called it kind of sugarcoating the problem, and suggested that it should be met with, as she put it, deep skepticism. She wasn't the only person that night or the next day to issue that. Michelle Wu, put out some generally favorable reviews of the mayor's speech and the event itself, but she was pretty sharp in her critique of not only the BPS budget, but of the housing plan, as we described earlier, and the transportation plan from the mayor.
By the way, she's also looking more prophetic around free service, because you look at what's happening with some of the free bus service in some communities. Some people saying maybe this is a workable idea.
Yes, and Councilor Janey, Council President Janey, has already indicated she intends to push through her pulpit the idea of the Route 28 bus becoming free on the MBTA. She's a big advocate of that. She has some allies there with State Rep Russell Holmes, most notably. But again, still an uphill climb for that to become system-wide. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that notion, which at first seemed quite exotic from Michelle Wu, is gaining some traction.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Bill Forry from the Dorchester Reporter. Bill, finally, speaking of uphill climbs, a really long one for the people of Haiti after the earthquake 10 years ago. A lot of people in Boston have ties to Haiti, and there's going to be an exhibit coming up around that. Tell us what's involved in that.
Yeah, so January 10th, 2010, that's the date that really lives in infamy for not only Haitian people, but people who are friends of Haiti and all over the world. Obviously, the earthquake that afternoon destroyed much of Port-au-Prince and other communities around Haiti, killing. There's a huge range between 250, 300,000 people died that day or in subsequent days. So just a worldwide tragedy, really. In Boston, of course, as you remember, it was deeply affected here by those of us who have friends and family in Haiti and co-workers. There's so many Haitian people here. It's such a big diaspora community in Boston. The trauma of that event is still felt acutely by so many people here. Tomorrow, Boston City Hall, the Walsh administration, and other allies, including the Haitian Artists Association of Massachusetts, Assembly, I should say, they're hosting a kickoff ceremony for a new exhibit that's of Haitian artists in the third floor gallery at Boston City Hall. It starts at 4:30. It's going to feature some remarks from people who were personally affected, and it's dedicated, of course, to the memory of those who were lost 10 years ago tomorrow.
In your current issue, you have a contribution from Jessica Pierre, who's a Haitian American from Boston, but who was visiting Haiti just before the quake. I read her piece. I was fascinated by that anxiety about trying to get in touch with people. Your family was part of that. Yeah. Talk about what you did with that.
Yeah, I mean, those early hours were so stressful, and even the next few days of relatives trying to reach friends and relatives in Haiti and being unable to reach anyone. The cell phone service, of course, was down. There really wasn't a lot of ways to communicate, but we did find in those early hours and days that there were, new technologies kicked in. You mentioned Twitter before we went on the air. It became kind of an important means of communications in that. Facebook, other social media. So Jessica writes eloquently in her piece today about all those feelings that continue to kind of haunt people who went through that experience. And of course, her family survives, gratefully. They weren't. No one in her family were killed or wounded in that event, but still stressful days with trying to reunify, and everybody in her family is accounted for back here in Boston.
By the way, we should mention people want to keep up with the flow. You've got the website and the feed, so let's remind people.
Sure, and by the way, we have a BostonHaitian.com, which is our Haitian site, and we do the Dorchester and Mattapan news can be found at .news.com.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks, Chris.
Bill Forry from the Dorchester Reporter.